I never understood the intoxicating allure of power, the drive that makes people claw their way to the top. I thought it was a sickness, a character flaw. Then, one day, I found myself sitting in a rented sedan, parked on a hill overlooking the town that had tried to crush me, and in my briefcase was a report that was, for all intents and purposes, a death sentence for every single person down there. For the first time, I understood. The feeling was almost biblical. It was the feeling of holding lightning in my hands, and I was about to decide exactly where it would strike. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about a debt being paid in full, with interest compounded over a lifetime of pain. If you believe that sometimes justice isn't found in a courtroom, but is crafted by the very hands that were once pushed away, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you are about to witness how a ghost from the past returned to collect what he was owed. Let's get into it. To understand why I would want to burn a town to the ground, you have to understand the town itself. Picture a small, isolated community nestled in the rural heartland, a place where time moves slower and the church steeples cast long, judgmental shadows over everything. This was a town built on two pillars, the one true factory and the one true faith. And the problem with my life is that I was born violating the rules of both. The air in my hometown was thick with a very specific kind of piety, a suffocating, conservative moral purity where appearances were everything. It didn't matter who you were behind closed doors. It only mattered that you were seen in a pew every Sunday, that you nodded to the right people, and that you never ever aired your dirty laundry. Keeping up the facade wasn't just a social nicety, it was the primary law of survival. But my laundry wasn't just dirty. It was stained with a sin that wasn't even mine. You see, I'm what they used to call a rape baby, a term as brutal as the act itself. My mother was an orphan, taken in by her aunt and uncle after her parents died. Her uncle was a man of considerable standing in the local religious hierarchy, a pillar of the community. He was also a monster. Along with a few of his equally pious friends, he did unspeakable things to my mother under his own roof. In a town obsessed with appearances, a secret like that is a dangerous poison. And when the inevitable happened, when my mother got pregnant, the town needed a story that fit their pristine narrative. So, they invented one. It was so much easier to paint a vulnerable, traumatized young woman as a shameless harlot, a temptress who ran around seducing devout, married men of God. It protected the powerful. It reinforced the town's moral order. And so, my mother was cast out, branded. Why she didn't just leave, I'll never fully know. Maybe she had no money, no connections, nowhere to go, or maybe some broken part of her still thought of that wretched place as home. So, there I came into the picture. A boy born out of wedlock, with no acknowledged father. From the moment I took my first breath, I was branded. I was living proof of a sin the town had already passed judgment on. I wasn't a child. I was a stain. My childhood was hell. That's the simplest way to put it. I won't drown you in the grim details, but imagine growing up knowing in your bones that you are fundamentally reviled. Every hushed conversation that stops when you walk by, every mother that pulls her child a little closer, every door that closes a little too quickly. By the time I started school, I was already a ghost. School just gave my tormentors a name and a face. The bullying was relentless, a daily ritual of humiliation. But it wasn't just the kids. The teachers, devout members of the community, were active participants. They'd lose my homework. They'd seat me alone in the back. They'd use me as an example of what happens when you stray from the path. One teacher once told the class, while looking directly at me, that some trees are born rotten and can only produce rotten fruit. I was 8. The lesson was clear. I wasn't a person to be taught. I was a problem to be contained. The Reddit post I saw asked, "Whatever happened to the trenchcoat kid at your school?" Well, I became him. Or my town's version of him. If they were all going to treat me like a freak, like a damaged, dangerous thing lurking in the shadows, then I would lean into it. I started wearing dark, oversized clothes. I stopped speaking unless I had to. I cultivated a hostile, weird energy on purpose. It was armor. My strange, off-putting persona became a shield. If they were already convinced I was a monster, they might as well be afraid of me. It was the only form of power I had. Somehow, through sheer, stubborn spite, I graduated with decent grades, and that's when a sliver of light broke through. A distant aunt, my mother's cousin, reached out. She was the family's black sheep, the one who had escaped to the city decades ago and never looked back. I think she saw herself in me. She helped me get into a college in a real city, a sprawling metropolis where no one knew my name or my story. Around that same time, my mother's body finally gave out. She drank herself to death. I can't and I won't ever blame her for it. Her life had been a long, slow execution, and the bottle was just the final blow. But in a last, heartbreaking act of love, she left me a small life insurance policy. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was my ticket out. The city was a rebirth. For the first time, I could walk down a street and just be a person, anonymous, normal. I started therapy, painstakingly working through the deep, jagged wounds that town had carved into my soul. I learned that I wasn't a stain. I wasn't rotten fruit. I was just a man who had survived something terrible. I built a new life, a new identity. I got a degree, then another. I found I had a knack for seeing patterns others missed, for untangling complex systems. Years passed. The boy in the trench coat faded, replaced by a man in a business suit. I became an analytical consultant for a high-level international firm. We're the people other companies call when they have a problem they can't solve with a spreadsheet. We do out-of-the-box analysis, deep dives, corporate forensics. It's challenging, lucrative work. Sometimes, part of that work involves downsizing, assessing facilities, streamlining operations, and yes, sometimes recommending closure. It's a grim business, and I do feel for the people who lose their jobs. But it's a job. If I don't do it, someone else will. Then, a few years ago, the assignment landed on my desk. My company had been contracted to assess 3 aging factories for a major conglomerate. The client wanted to consolidate, move one of the operations abroad, and shut one of the domestic plants down completely. My job was to do a wholesale assessment of all 3 and make the final recommendation. And there it was, on the 3rd line of the brief, a name I hadn't typed or written in 15 years. The name of my hometown, the one smokestack town. The factory wasn't just in the town, it was the town. 60% of the working population was employed there. The rest of the local economy, the diners, the grocery stores, the mechanics, was a constellation of businesses that revolved around that single massive industrial sun. And of course, the religious community that ran the town's social life also ran the factory. The elders, the deacons, the men like my uncle, they were the foremen, the supervisors, the plant managers. Promotions were handed out based on perceived holiness and family connections, not skill or merit. The whole place was a festering pit of incompetence, held together by hypocrisy and inertia. And I was being sent back, with the authority to pass judgment on it all. The drive back was surreal. As I pulled into the town limits, it was like driving into a photograph from a nightmare. Nothing had changed. The same church, the same faded storefronts, the same oppressive quiet. At first, no one recognized me. The scowling, chubby outcast they remembered was gone, replaced by a lean, sharp man in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. I was just another corporate drone from the city. I spent 2 days there. I toured the factory floor, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. I sat in their conference rooms, listening to their speeches, their projections, their beautifully constructed lies about efficiency and output. I audited their books. I reviewed their safety records. I analyzed their supply chain. Every page I turned, every number I crunched, confirmed what I already knew in my gut. The place was a dinosaur, rotten from the inside out. And as I worked, I started dropping hints. A casual mention of a teacher's name. A reference to an old street corner. I'd watch their faces. As the gears turned, the flicker of confusion giving way to a dawning, shocked recognition. The moment it clicked for the plant manager, a man who used to be one of my chief tormentors in high school, was a masterpiece of silent film. His face went pale, his professional smile froze, and then melted. You could see him cycling through a dozen emotions in 5 seconds. Fear, disbelief, and then a desperate, pathetic flicker of hope. That night, they threw a party for me. For the hometown boy who made good, they called it. It was held in the tacky town hall, filled with familiar faces. My old buddies from school, now paunchy and balding, slapped me on the back, beer on their breath. They were all there. The whole cast of my miserable childhood, now trying to be my best friend. And I played my part beautifully. I smiled. I laughed. We reminisced about fake good times that never happened. And then, just for my own private amusement, I would gently steer the conversation. Hey, remember Mr. Henderson's class? I'd say with a grin. Man, remember that time you guys cornered me by the lockers and flushed my history project? Hilarious. I was so mad then. But kids will be kids, right? And I'd watch. I'd watch the bonhomie drain from their faces. I'd watch the awkward silence descend as they remembered, really remembered. Then I'd burst out laughing. A big, hearty, forgiving laugh, as if it was the funniest joke in the world. And they would nervously laugh along, relieved. Their relief was the sweetest part. They thought, oh, thank God, he's over it. He's one of us. He'll protect us. The hometown boy will look after his own. Inside, I was a coiled snake. A furnace of pure, refined hatred, burning with a cold, clean flame. Every fake smile they gave me was fuel. Every forced laugh was a confirmation. I was looking at what they had become, stuck, stagnant, their entire futures chained to this one decaying factory, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was going to take it all away from them. After the party, my last night in town, I took the rented car and just drove. I cruised down the poorly lit streets, past the small, sad houses with their flickering television screens. I saw the playground where they'd broken my glasses, the corner store where the owner used to watch me to make sure I didn't steal anything. I was taking a final tour of the crime scene. And that's when I felt it, that profound, overwhelming sense of power. It was a physical sensation, a current running up my spine. It was a feeling so intense, so consuming. It was almost erotic. For my entire life, they had held all the power. Now, it was my turn. The rest, as they say, is history. I flew back to the city and I wrote my report. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever created. It was a masterpiece of corporate destruction. I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to fabricate a single thing. That was the beauty of it. The truth was my weapon. I just took every flaw, every instance of mismanagement, every safety violation, every bit of nepotistic rot, and I polished it. I presented their incompetence not as a series of isolated mistakes, but as a systemic, deeply ingrained, and irreversible cultural failure. I used their own data, their own words, their own history against them. My report was scathing, undeniable, and surgically precise. I recommended the immediate and permanent closure of the plant. The company accepted my recommendation without question. The announcement came 3 weeks later. The factory was to be shut down within 6 months. The town didn't just stumble, it collapsed. The one sun at the center of their universe winked out, and all the little planets went spinning off into the cold, dark void. Over the next 3 years, the town died a slow, agonizing death. Businesses shuttered, for sale signs sprouted like weeds, and then rotted on their posts. The people who could leave did. The ones who were stuck, they fell apart. The facade they had all worked so hard to maintain finally crumbled, revealing the ugly reality beneath. Drug and alcohol abuse skyrocketed. Domestic violence and petty crime became commonplace. Lives disintegrated, marriages ended, families fractured. Sometimes, late at night, I still stalk them on social media. I scroll through the public profiles of my former bullies. I see their bitter, angry posts about the government, about the economy, about their miserable lives. I see the pictures of their grim, joyless faces. I see them trapped in the rubble of the world they built, the world that I had the privilege of tearing down. And I feel nothing. Not a flicker of remorse. Not a shred of guilt. I feel a quiet, profound sense of balance, of justice. They took my mother's life and my childhood. I took their future. It seems like a fair trade. If I could do it all again, I would. In a heartbeat. My only regret is that I couldn't be there in person to watch their faces when they got the news. In my fantasies, I would have stayed for a year, just to watch the decay up close, to breathe in the ashes of their shattered lives. But that's just a fantasy. In reality, I will only ever go back there one more time. My uncle, the pillar of the community, is old now. When he finally dies, I'm going to drive back to that dead town, find his grave, and I am going to piss on it. What do you think? Was this justice, or was it something darker? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have a story about a debt being paid, I want to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who knows that sometimes the best revenge is watching a rotten foundation crumble under its own weight. Until next time.